Good morning, and welcome to the September 21st meeting of the City of Lakeland Planning and Zoning Board. The board meets every third Tuesday of the month to review proposals for changing the city's comprehensive plan, its future land use map, zoning changes consistent with the map, and conditional use permits. The board is made up of 7 members appointed by the City Commission and is assisted by the staff of the Community and Economic Development Department and the City Attorney's Office. Staff will advance presentation slides that should have been provided prior to the meeting. The meeting is divided into 2 parts. The first part is a public hearing where we expect to hear new applicants explain their request and receive comments from affected parties. The second part of the meeting is termed the general meeting and primarily consists of acting on recommendations from staff about the cases that came up in the prior month's meeting. We invite everyone who wishes to participate to be heard. We do ask that you be concise in your comments and that speakers avoid being repetitive. That is, if several people have pointed out traffic concerns, there is no need to hear additional comments regarding traffic again, but we would like to hear anything new that has not been addressed. In order to allow everyone to have an opportunity to speak, there will be a 3-minute time limit for each speaker, and the clerk has a timer for this purpose. We respectfully ask that you adhere to this rule. We also ask at this time that you silence all mobile devices. Additionally, when you do come up to speak, please give your name and your address. With that, we thank you all for being here, and I'll turn the meeting over to the Secretary, Ronald Roberts. Ronald?
Good morning. Item 1, proposed text amendment to the Lakeland Comprehensive Plan, Our Community 2030, to adopt a property rights element. Applicant, City of Lakeland.
Good morning. Mary Stahl, Senior Planner, Community and Economic Development. The state legislature passed in July a requirement that every city and local government to adopt a new element in the comprehensive plan. This element requires the city to consider rights of property owners when making decisions. The state will not consider any future land use amendments until this element is adopted and sent to the state. The following is verbatim from the DEO and will be added to our comprehensive plan. So the rights include the right to physically possess and control interests in property, including easement, leases, or mineral rights. The right to use, maintain, develop, and improve property for personal use or the use of any other person subject to law and local ordinances. The right of the owner to privacy and to exclude others from property to protect the owner's possessions and property. And the right to dispose of property through sale or gift. That should be it.
Does anyone have any questions on the board? Anyone from the audience?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Please, do I hear a motion to accept?
Well, this is just the public hearing.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, and for additional background, we've mentioned this amendment was going to be coming forward several times, and as Ms. Stoll stated, this is a result of legislation that was passed this prior session, and it amended the Burt J. Harris Property Rights Act by requiring that each local government adopt into its comp plan these additional criteria. And so these are verbatim from the statute. These have also been vetted with Department of Economic Opportunity through the Central Florida Regional Planning Council, so they agreed that this is a good approach to do this and limit it to just the statutory requirements.
Any other comment? Question? Thank you. Ron?
Item 2, conditional use to allow for the demolition and reconstruction of a secondary school for grades 6 through 8 on property located at 2815 Eden Park. Owner, Polk County Public Schools. Applicant, Gadd and Associates. And this is for consideration of final decision.
Hi, good morning. My name is Philip Scarce. I'm Principal Planner with Planning and Zoning, with Community Economic Development. And this is you said this is a conditional use to allow for the demolition and reconstruction of the Southwest Middle School campus. The site's located at 2815 Eden Parkway. It basically comprises the entire block along West Edgewood, or East Edgewood, here at, this is Eden Parkway, Edgewood Drive, and this is South Lincoln. So the campus, the school board campus, takes up that entire block. Again, this is a plan to demolish the existing buildings there and reconstruct a new facility to modernize the Southwest Middle School campus. Just going around the block in some pictures. This is looking on Edgewood Drive on the front of the site. This is looking into the site on Eden Parkway. Again, another shot looking north on Eden Parkway, or excuse me, south. This is looking north on Lincoln. Again, another shot of Lincoln, the athletic field in the background. And this is on Eden Parkway, looking at the school campus. And this is interesting. This is a sidewalk on the school board property that runs between Eden Parkway and Lincoln. So this will be a part of the discussion today as well during the request. But I'll get into that in a few minutes. So this is the applicant's site plan. And I'm going to stop here and give you just some brief history of the Lincoln and, the Southwest Middle School, and a little background on the site and reason why conditional use is required. So this site is an 18.24 acre site, and again, it encompasses that entire block on West Edgewood Drive from Eden Parkway on the east to South Lincoln on the west. The school was established in 1956 as a junior high school that included 9th grade. The school became a middle school for grades 6 to 8 in 1992. The subject property has a single-family RA3 zoning designation and a future land use designation of residential medium. Since the establishment in 1956, the surrounding neighborhoods developed primarily as single-family and two-family dwellings on the edge of the property, and then again at the north end of the property, there's a sidewalk that runs between Lincoln and Eden. The request is for a conditional use permit for a level 2 public and quasi-public non-commercial principal use within the RA3 zoning districts. School facilities require a conditional use permit in all of the city's single-family and multifamily zoning districts, so that's why we're establishing the CUP today. They didn't have a CUP, so it would be basically, it was considered previously just a legal non-conforming use. So this conditional use permit will kind of memorialize that and bring the site into conformance, plus allow for the expansion of the school. Things to note about the site plan is that the main campus, which was closer to the West Edgewood, those uses are going to be shifted further north. The athletic field will be brought closer to West Edgewood, as well as some of the play courts there. You see the parking area has been expanded, and the bus lane is going to be expanded. So this is the good thing about redeveloping this site, is that it will solve the issues when we're talking about car rider and bus lanes. So this is an example of what the existing car rider pickup line is now. It's about 225 feet off of Eden Parkway. With this new site plan, now this car rider line is going to be over 700 feet, plus there's going to have a lot more parking. That's about 130 parking spaces right here on Eden Parkway. So that will greatly enhance the function of the site when you're talking about vehicle trips around the site. Plus the bus line, which is, I believe it's right here off of South Lincoln. This bus line, one-way bus lane, but wide enough to allow buses to stack 2 by 2, is over 500 feet. So I think that is a benefit as well with that use with the reconstruction. So I'm going to stop here and let the applicant answer any questions you may have, or if you have any questions of staff, we'll be glad to answer them before we get into the conditions. Again, this is for consideration. So once you decide on this today, this will go before the City Commission for their consideration as well. But I'm going to stop here and let the applicant speak if you have any questions for them.
Good morning, Rodney Gadd with Gadd & Associates, 1925 US Highway 98 South.
Good morning, I'm Jennifer Farrell with the School Board Planning Division down in Bartow.
We appreciate you guys looking at this today. Philip has done a great job, we think, of explaining the project. Staff has been involved with this as we go. We've been working on conditions up into yesterday and are generally in agreement with what they have offered. We may need to tweak them a little bit moving forward after the owner has a chance to review them. This is a marquee project for this area of town and a large project for the school board, and should be very good for the community.
Do you have any questions?
Any question? Rob? Sure.
I noticed that the buildings are set back. Is that so that the school can remain open while construction is going on?
Yes, the plan is to keep the school in operation while construction is going on, so the kids will not be in another location. We will not need additional portables. They will still be able to go to class as we work through a phased construction.
Does the reconstruction provide for any expansion of classrooms?
The student count or student stations is going to increase. I believe the number was by 131. And those are stations, that's not actual students. That's a little less than 10% increase than what's already there now. So there's about 800 students there now. There's a possibility for them increasing, say, by 80, something like that.
You mentioned the sidewalk between Eden Parkway and Lincoln. Is there a way for walkers to going through the campus?
Yes, ma'am. And that's what one of the conditions are. We are asking the school board to dedicate 20 feet to the city so we can maintain that sidewalk and provide that vital link between Eden Parkway and South Lincoln, because there are no sidewalks once you get up around West End Crescent to come over, and it is a long detour for a pedestrian to have to go that route to get around. So one of the conditions is to request the school board to dedicate to the city that 20 feet so we can upgrade that sidewalk and maintain it and keep it safe and operating.
Any other questions from the board?
I don't have a question. I do have just a quick comment. I appreciate the approach to the traffic, increasing the queues for buses as well as car riders, I think. And that was my initial question, but walking through it makes sense the way it was approached.
Anybody else? Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are there any comments from the audience?
And we'll go over the conditions. And there is a revision to one of the conditions, and I'll highlight that. So condition number 1 is permitted use, public school for grades 6 through 8, and those accessory uses typically associated with the school of this grade level, including outdoor recreational facilities, such as the athletic field and basketball courts. Number 2, site plan. The project shall be developed in substantial accordance with the proposed site plan as attachment C, which we showed. With the approval of the Community and Economic Development Director, minor changes can be made at the time of site plan review without requesting a modification to the conditional use. Number 3, development standards in accordance with the RA3 Urban Neighborhood Context Subdistrict, except that setback shall be in accordance with the campus site plan as attachment C. All right, buffering and landscaping. Condition 4, number A, letter A. A type A landscape buffer shall be planted and maintained along the entire frontage of West Edgewood Drive and adjacent to off-street parking areas abutting Eden Parkway and South Lincoln Avenue rights-of-way as specified in Table 4.51 and Figure 4.5-3 of the Land Development Code. Here's where we have a change to this condition, and I'll bring it up. I'll have Matt put it on the screen for you. The buffer may vary in material and height so as not to create a visual or safety hazard to comply with safe school standards. So that condition, excuse me. Is it a laptop? Yep. So that'll be one of the conditions that as we move forward, I just want to highlight that change because I didn't have a chance to change it this morning on the slideshow. Oh, camera, sorry. Thanks. So just wanted to highlight that. B, for athletic fields and perimeter security fencing, the maximum height shall not exceed 8 feet and shall be constructed of either black or green vinyl coated chain link fence material with adjacent when adjacent to public streets, such fencing shall be buffered by a minimum of 5-foot wide landscape strip located between the fence and the right-of-way. The buffer shall be planted with a low-lying shrub with a minimum of 16 shrubs per 100 linear feet or fraction thereof. Five, outdoor lighting. Non-athletic lighting, outdoor lighting fixtures shall be shielded, in accordance with Section 4.6 of the Land Development Code. Athletic lighting and outdoor recreational facilities. Any outdoor lighting fixtures used for athletic fields and outdoor recreational activities shall use full cutoff or directionally shielded luminaries such that all light emitted is directed to the playing field court and be shielded to minimize the light and glare and trespass on adjacent properties. The use of outdoor athletic lighting shall not be permitted between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. And 6, the transportation conditions. A binding concurrency site plan shall be submitted, or a binding concurrency determination application shall be submitted with site plan approval. ADA compliant sidewalk network shall be constructed between the principal building and all the sidewalks along West Edgewood Drive, Eden Parkway, and South Lincoln Avenue. C, bicycle parking shall be provided in close proximity to the campus principal student entrance. This bicycle parking may be a wave design that is affixed to a concrete pad to maximize capacity. Comb or toe style racks that only secure the front of the bicycle shall be prohibited. And E, a 20-foot wide easement or right-of-way shall be dedicated to the city for the sidewalk along the northern edge of the development site between South Lincoln Avenue and Eden Parkway. F, parent drop-off and pickup activities shall be operated within the main Eden Parkway parking lot between Palmyra Drive and Pablo Street. The school district shall cooperate with the city to make on-site circulation and operation adjustments as necessary should excessive queuing or congestion occur on the surrounding street network in the future. So, but we, hopefully that is solved with this new 700 plus foot rider queue line. So those are conditions, and we recommend approval of this conditional use permit, and I'll answer any questions if you have any. for staff.
Further question from the audience? Do I hear a motion to?
Wait a minute.
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Chairman, I believe there is someone that wants to speak.
I'm Brad Hankey. I live right on that sidewalk. My question is about the trees that are already there, the oak trees. Are they planned on being kept? Because that is a good buffer right now between
Yes.
the school and where we're at.
There are no plans to take out any of the trees.
Okay.
At this time, if once it's dedicated to the city, our arborists will go out and look at it. If there's any trees that are diseased, that need to come out, then yeah, those would come out. Or if they pose a hazard and falling limbs, things like that. But no, those trees are going to be maintained the way they are.
All right, and then when the portables were taken down recently, we had an influx of rodents. So my question is, when the school is demolished, are we going to have some sort of extermination process in place to try to keep that from getting beyond the school grounds?
Sure, maybe the school board representative can answer that. I'm not aware of anything to that.
I will certainly take that concern back and let them know.
That's all. Thanks.
Any other comments, questions? Now, do we hear a motion to accept the recommendation of the
So moved?
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, sir.
Item 3, application of PUD zoning to allow for a 148-bed assisted living facility on approximately 10.45 acres, generally located south of the Polk Parkway, west of Airport Road, and north of Clarion Boulevard. Owner, Louise W. Moore Family Trust. Applicants, Sarah Case, Econ South LLC.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Todd Vargo with Community and Economic Development. This is a PUD, so today will be a public hearing. We'll be back before you next month with a recommendation and a staff memo. So you won't have to act on this item today, just as an FYI. So the property is 3201 Airport Road. It's south of the Polk Parkway on the west side of Airport Road and north of Carillon Boulevard. The property was annexed into the city and does not have a current zoning designation, but it does have an interchange activity center future land use district. Because there's no zoning, the applicant is in front of us today to request the PUD zoning to allow the 148-bed assisted living facility. This is the site plan that was originally sent to us. I don't think there's been many changes, but we did ask for a black and white one that'd be like a little more easier to read. So this one I think is a little easier to read. Here's Airport Road, here's Carillon Boulevard. So north is the right side of the screen. The assisted living facility will also have a memory care unit, which will be this closest to Carillon Boulevard. There'll be the entry and amenity in the middle, and then the assisted living facility on the right-hand side. I don't really have that much else to say right now, so I'm going to ask the applicant if they want to come up. We're trying to load up their slideshow right now, so here we go. Okay. Probably here. You can do that. You can run it from there.
Good morning. For the record, Sarah Case, representing Econ South. Our address is 6700 South Florida Avenue in Lakeland, and I'm here representing the Louise Moore family. So as Todd indicated, we are proposing a 148-bed assisted care living facility right off of Airport Road in front of Carillon. He's already put this on the screen, but this is our proposed site plan. You can see access there on Airport Road. I wanted to show you in red, we plotted the, there's a DOT, FDOT, so Florida Department of Transportation easement, and that is plotted in red. And basically, it just says that we have access to Airport Road, and if we need to go through that area, we would just need to get a permit from FDOT. And I know that was of concern with maybe some surrounding residents, but that's why we plotted it on there for you all to see. So again, here's the black and white site plan, and then we tried to rotate the aerial to kind of match. So north would be on my right side, your left. And that is how it would be situated for Carillon, in front of Carillon. I will tell you, we originally had a homeowners association meeting scheduled with Carillon. However, they canceled. We were supposed to meet with them tomorrow morning. They canceled because they are more concerned about another project that's going on in front of them. So I kind of saw that as a good sign. So, but we were willing to meet with them, and for whatever reason, they canceled. This is a rendering of a replica site in Ormond Beach. So the development company that is proposing this assisted living facility, this is what they've been approved for in Ormond Beach. And I just wanted to show you what the elevations would look like. So this is the courtyard. And then you have looking into the entrance. And then, let me go back. And memory care facility. So again, wanted to mention traffic, because I know that is always a hot topic to mention traffic. This is a very low intensive use for this area. Again, Todd mentioned it in his staff report, but the site right now has IAC land use, which is Interchange Activity Center, which could be extremely intensive because of the location off of the Parkway on Airport Road. What we're proposing with the dwelling units, if you will, 148 beds, it's a very, very low intensive use, as you can see, 2.02 trips per bed, and then a 0.17 peak hour trip. On the slide, you'll see market study. We looked at a 12-mile radius and to see what was available, assisted living facilities with memory care, and they targeted this area in Lakeland to come here and provide this service for Lakeland. So again, there's the site plan on the aerial, and I will stand for any questions.
If you go back to the previous slide, I just want to clarify, units pertains to how many beds or how many facilities?
Per bed.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the audience?
So we will be back in front of you next month. I know you all are not making a decision today, but wanted to give you this information.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Comments from the audience? Questions?
Barbara Sweeney, 3356 Fiddle Leaf Way. I live in Carillon Lakes. I don't have any objection to this facility because I might be part of it one of these days. But I just have a suggestion on the property line in between Carillon Lakes and this facility. I don't know if they're thinking about putting in maybe a fence and some trees and some bushes to kind of buffer it, because when you talk about the traffic On the other side of Caroline Lakes, I know you're aware, there are going to be 300 apartments being built, and their entrance and exit is going to be right next to the property line. So I'm thinking just to make things better for everybody. We do have some existing trees and some bushes, but it's not all the way up and down the property line. So it's just something to consider. Thank you.
George Lucier, 3003 Bellflower Way in Caroline Lakes, and I am a member of the Board of Directors. One of the concerns that we had heard, but is not shown in these drawings at all, would be that somehow there would be some kind of an access onto Caroline Boulevard. And I wonder if that could be addressed.
Are you asking for them
Yes.
to add that, or?
No, we're not asking to add it, but some of the residents have voiced a concern that this would be a first step, and then there would be a change suggested somewhere along the way, and they would get that idea, of course, from what we just went through on the other side of the road. So I just wondered if possibly that idea could be put to bed, would be one way to put it.
We wouldn't be able to put it to bed, so to speak, but it's not shown in the plan, so it would not be allowed, and they would have to come and apply and go through another public hearing process in order to amend, to allow an access like that. But we wouldn't be able to prevent them from applying for something like that in the future, but it would have to go through another process.
And if I understand correctly, unlike the other development, there is not an access easement that's been granted by the Property Owners Association to this property owner for access from.
That is correct.
So you all still maintain control of that access point, so regardless of zoning, they would not be provided access unless you all granted them that right.
Thank you for clarifying that. And as far as meeting with the people that are proposing this, you all know that we're operating in the sunshine. So we're like you, why we're kind of restricted on the way we can do things. And at this point, we've been advised that we probably don't want to meet with anybody until these types of things play through, so that we don't in any way influence the sale or development of this property. We're not being difficult.
Any other comments from the audience? Sarah, do you have any response?
I did want to address that access. When we had our DRT meeting with the city, engineering department, Mahan Pete, suggested possibly it would be nice to have a secondary access off of Caroline because of the facility itself. However, Caroline Lakes Homeowners Association owns that sliver of property, and we cannot access that. So we are proposing the one and only entrance that you see here. And this will be a binding site plan when it comes before you again next month.
Do you have final approval from DOT to access Airport Road?
So we have an agreement with DOT, the property owner does, from 1998. And we will be granted access. We have to go through the motions of the permitting process, but it was arranged in 1998 that this site would have access.
The reason I bring this up is it's been quite an ordeal for the developer of the other development that's going on, trying to get just a right in and out for his facility or his project. Mm-hmm. And I was really surprised when I saw that, and you mentioned that it had already been, stamped, that this was going to be permitted.
Mm-hmm. And if we were to look at the aerial, Todd, could you, thank you. You'll see that the access is right in between some wetland areas and right-of-way that was taken by DOT. And so they did not want to deny this property owner access. So this is our one and only access.
Do you have any response to the earlier comment that was made regarding a possible buffer between the two properties?
Next month, staff will bring forward their conditions of approval for this PUD, and I'm imagining that there will be a buffer required, so.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Any other comments from the audience? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks. Sir. That will be brought up at the next meeting for approval.
Item 4, change in zoning from RA4 single-family residential to O1 low-impact office on property located at 103 West 7th Street. Owner, Lakeland Community Redevelopment Agency. Applicant, Carolyn Bostwick, Lakeland Community Redevelopment Agency.
Good morning again, Damaris Stahl, Senior Planner of Community Economic Development. This request in zoning change for 103 West 7th Street is currently a vacant property. It's zoned RA4, single family residential. And as you can see on the map display here is general location of the property. The proposed change to O1 low impact office on the property is within the Lakeland CRA Midtown District. The permitted uses for O1, just so you have reference, is medical office, non-medical offices, veterinary clinics, and residential above first floor. The property is owned by Lakeland Community Redevelopment Agency. It was acquired in 2007, and the property is located on the northwest corner of Florida Avenue and West 7th Street. Developing within the low-impact office zoning will contribute to the Lakeland CRA's goal to redevelop infill lots. The Lakeland CRA published in December 2020 notice of disposition for this property with specific requirements for development that will meet the redevelopment goals in their plan. At this time, the request will accommodate development of a proposed project by Phoenix Properties, LLC, should the City Commission approve the development agreement and the disposition. The CRA desires to attract like development proposals in the event that current disposition process fails to yield a development agreement. In this photo, you can see the aerial of the property. Let's see if I can. Oh. All right. As you can see, on the north is a vacant lot. To the west is vacant as well. This is Lakeland Regional Medical Center, and to the south is Robinson Kyle's Counseling and Testing Center Clinic. And these are just images of the property. This one is facing west on the southeast corner of the property. This is the southeast corner facing to the east with Lakeland Regional. Southeast corner of the property facing south, and you can see to the rear the Robson Kyle Clinic. And this is the northeast corner of the property facing the vacant property to the north. oops. And we have Tara Lynn Bostwick here in the audience. If you have any questions, it is just the first reading. So in the next meeting, we will provide recommendations for this property.
Good morning. My name is Tara Lynn Bostwick, Senior Project Manager with Lakeland CRA, Community and Economic Development. Thank you for hearing this request. As Ms. Dell mentioned, the lot is owned by the CRA, and we have had quite a bit of interest in development of the property recently, in particular for medical or similar use. The requested zoning or rezoning aligns with the uses we have in our Midtown District redevelopment plan. And recently we've had some CRA redevelopment activity in the area. So just north of the 103 West 7th Street, the parcel just north of it is currently being developed for a cafe that will likely yield a lot of traffic and utilization from the medical center. And that project is in receipt of grant funds from the CRA to do so, to develop that. Just south of the parcel, as Ms. Stowe mentioned, is Robinson Kyle's Counseling Center. That project recently received its CO a few months ago, and that was also funded by the CRA. So our goal is to make that connection moving north to develop our lots or others in similar uses. And so this rezoning, in our opinion, would help accommodate that. As mentioned, Phoenix Properties has responded to the disposition of the property and has expressed an interest in developing a medical office. They've done medical office redevelopment in Lakeland for a long time, and they actually have also acquired north of 8th Street to 10th Street some additional parcels, which they also intend to express desire to develop for medical office use. So this rezoning and the development of it for similar use aligns with our plans and also future plans that were expressed for properties north. And that is all I have. Thank you for hearing, and I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a hearing, so anyone in the audience.
Anything from the audience?
Is there any public comment?
Further comment?
So we'll come back with the recommendation
Okay,
next month.
Okay, yes. Well, we'll go on. Next item, this will be brought up again next month, excuse me.
Item 5, minor modification of plan unit development, PUD zoning for the estates at Carpenters to allow for the construction of a new 3-story skilled care building, a chapel, an addition to existing dining facilities, a pond pavilion, and allow driveway access from Corporate Avenue. Owner Carpenters Home Estates, Inc., applicant Hetty Harmon, Civil Serve Design Group, Inc. And this is for consideration of final decision.
Good morning, Joshua Cheney with Community Economic Development. The subject property, known as Carpenter's Home Estates, is 24.9 acres. It is a residential care center with PUD zoning and RM future land use. It is located at 1001 Carpenter's Way, which is north of Carpenter's Way and east of Corporate Avenue. The PUD has been modified several times in 2006 and 2007 since its origination, and it's now before you for review as a minor modification, as the applicant is requesting, let me go straight to their new site plan, a new 1-story, 1,100 square foot chapel addition with a 620 square foot covered porch. And that is here. Dining renovations, which are a one-story addition of 600 square foot with a 900 square foot open air terrace with an outdoor patio. And here is B. C would be a 3-story, 65,000 square foot for an assisted living and memory care structure here. And these are reallocated beds from the existing building, so there will not be any additional beds. And then as it relates to the original facility, or the existing facility that was part of a previous modification, that would be renovated, and that's the existing skilled care facility. E, down here on the southern portion of the site, will be a new 1,500 square foot single-story open-air pavilion. And then finally, F will be a new access road off of Corporate Avenue. And with that, I will hand it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Hello, I'm Hetty Harmon with Civil Serve Design Group. I think everything was outlined pretty well in the staff's presentation. The result of this new building is because the existing building is all double occupancy units. And what they've done is, to create a new assisted living building with all single occupancy, as a result of the pandemic. I think this will highlight, we will not, be increasing any beds in this development. I think they're highlighting some different activities, bringing some outdoor seating in for eating, and also the other access off a Corporate Way. That won't be a prime access. It will be used more for deliveries and the actual residents that are living there. And then also, the chapel, which they don't have on site. Down by the lake, they plan to do, pavilion and maybe some different walkways out there to get the residents out there and participating in outdoor activity. And with that, just so you know right now, there's 372 independent living units, 72 skilled beds, and 46 ALF beds, and they're licensed up to 52 beds on the site. And do you have any questions?
Any questions from anyone on the board? Any questions, any comments from the audience? Do I hear a motion to?
I move to approve the minor modification.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Were you asking for that approval, or?
Well, we are recommending approval. We do, if possible, I would like to just briefly go over the revised conditions of approval.
Okay.
If you'll allow for that.
Yes.
So at the beginning here, you'll see that we have modified the permitted uses. So that will now read multifamily residential dwellings for the elderly, an assisted living facility, and a skilled nursing facility, plus accessory uses such as congregate dining facilities, a chapel, an outdoor pavilion, barber shops, and beauty salons, banks and gift shops intended and limited to the exclusive use of the residents of the estates at Carpenters. The maximum intensity of use verifies what the applicant just described. The multifamily dwellings for the elderly will consist of 372 dwelling units, and then the skilled nursing facility of 100 beds. And then multifamily dwellings for the elderly may be used as part of an adult congregate living facility, provided that the maximum number of beds licensed by the state of Florida does not exceed 52. As I showed you previously, we have revised the exhibits. And then finally, as it relates to sidewalks, that has been revised to read, prior to construction of the proposed Corporate Avenue driveway, a recorded easement shall be provided for any intervening property that is needed to accommodate this connection. An ADA-compliant sidewalk shall be constructed along this driveway, excuse me, connecting to 1, a mid-block pedestrian crossing that is approved by the Public Works Department, or 2, a sidewalk that shall be constructed along the east side of Corporate Avenue between the driveway and Carpenter's Way, subject to confirming and securing public ownership of the street right-of-way. Each site plan submittal shall demonstrate how existing gaps in the internal pedestrian network will be eliminated. Thank you for that, and with that, I'll stand for any questions, if you have any.
Do we need to have another vote?
Well, I think,
Fresh motion to-
yeah, technically we should, because the masks make it a little difficult to hear, but I think the motion was to approve. I don't know if it was to approve as per the staff recommendation, which includes these conditions or not. So whoever made the motion, if that's what the pleasure of the board is to adopt these conditions, then I would ask that the maker of that motion just amend their motion to include the staff recommendation.
Who's that made the motion?
I made the motion, and I move to approve the minor modifications with the conditions as stated by staff.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. That concludes the public hearing part of our meeting. And our next item up is, in the general meeting, is a review of the minutes of the August meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at those minutes? There's a motion to accept them as submitted.
Motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second. Favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item 7, request for a change in land use on approximately 8.23 acres from convenience center to conservation. A change in land use on approximately 6.29 acres from residential low to convenience center, and a change in zoning on approximately 6.29 acres from limited development to pedestrian commercial district on property located north of Polk Parkway, east of Airport Road, and south of Steeplechase Drive, 3002 Airport Road. Owner Palm Airport Road LLC, applicant Hetty Harmon, Civil Serve Design Group, Inc. And note, applicant requests an additional 1-month continuance to revise the application to address the concerns of Steeplechase residents.
No objection from the city on that? All right, so we will take this up next month then.
I think we still would ask for a motion for that.
I move to approve the request for the continuance of 1 month.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
You have a question?
Recuse myself from vote.
Because Florida law obligates you to vote unless there's a conflict, if you're going to recuse, you'll have to state the reason why. If it's a conflict of interest, then you'll have to disclose what that conflict is.
One of the I already did that with all the forms, but one of the principals is a is an employer.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So you're
Recused.
recusing
Yeah.
yourself. Okay, thank you.
Item 8, changes to Article 4, general site development standards to adopt development standards for clothing collection / donation bins. Allow shipping containers as accessory structures for certain commercial uses, and expand the parking exempt area within downtown Lakeland north, south, and east of Lake Mirror, north of West Main Street, south of Lake Wire, and south of Orange Street. Applicant, City of Lakeland.
Good morning again. For the record, I'm Philip Scarce with Community and Economic Development. These next items are land use amendments to the city's land development code that that needs to be amended periodically as things change and as standards change throughout the nation. We try to address current trends. So with this first item, this is changes to Article 4 of the Land Development Code. There are 3 items with this specific amendment change with this specific item anyway. One being proposed changes to Article 4, subsection 4.3.1 of accessory structures. The second is proposed changes to clothing and collection bins, Article 4, subsection 4.3.8. And then there's a third amendment proposed to figure 4.11 of our parking code, which it expands the city's parking exempt area. So I'm going to do each one of these separately and just go through. So this first Land Development Code amendment is to allow for the expansion of shipping containers within the city for certain uses. So this amendment basically tees up the next year, the item 10 amendment, which goes into more detail as far as how these structures can be used and utilized within the city. This amendment seen here in our accessory structures specifies shipping containers may be used as accessory structures for certain commercial uses as specified in subsection 5.25.13 shipping containers as accessory structures for certain commercial uses. So this kind of tees up those future items that you're going to see in item 10 for those uses for that. So that's the only substantial change to this section, to Article 4.3, Section 4.3. Is just to allow for these containers to be used as an accessory structure. The next amendment we dealt with was for donation and collection bins, and there was considerable discussion at last month's meeting regarding these, and there were some changes made to the amendments that I'll go through. There's been a proliferation of the collection and donation bins in commercial industrial properties throughout the city. The bins are typically large metal structures, similar in appearance to solid waste collection bins and recycling bins, with individuals can drop off used books, clothes, and other items. Such bins, when left unattended, often placed in highly visible areas, vandalized, and also utilized for illegal dumping. As such, they become unsightly, and they become a visual blight within the city. While they provide a convenient way for items to be reused and recycled, there really needs to be some standards for their use. We were getting requests from our code enforcement division to have some type of standards that we can maintain these collection bins within the city without having this situation here that occur that you see on screen there. So we're using the Polk County model. The Polk County recently adopted donation bin within Polk County, and that's been working well. And we decided to keep that consistency because sometimes you go through the city and the county, don't know if you're in the city or county, so we try to make it easier for people that when they want to put a donation bin, so they've oh yeah, I'm in the city, so that's similar to what the county does, so yeah, I can do that. So the adoption of these standards will provide clear requirements for property owners and/or the operators of donation bins with regard to design, location, maintenance, and collection, and will allow the city to seek compliance when the standards are met. So during the August 17th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Board meeting, there was considerable discussion about the property owner's responsibility to ensure that all items are deposited within the donation bin. The language specifically limiting the liability to the owner has been removed so that either both the property owner and the bin operator will receive notification when the standards are not being met. In addition, the reference to collecting items every 7 days has been removed, since this may not be a realistic time frame for donation bin operators. And the primary intent is to ensure that all items are not placed outside the bin and they do not become a nuisance. So the proposed language that we had, we removed the language placing the sole burden on the property owner. So it's going to be basically, so with this new amendment here, that's going to be, it's going to be the burden on the property owner and the operator and the bin operator. So hopefully it'll get them to coordinate better as they move forward. And then the amendment also takes out the requirement for the 7 days to ensure that items are, they just need to, there's no time frame on that. They just need to ensure that they do not accumulate. So that could be 7 days, it could be 14 days, it could be 3 days, depending on the area and that collection bin. So those are the amendments. Let's see. So clothing and donation bins shall be operated within the O1, C2, C4, C5, I1 zoning industrial districts or improvements with a conditional use permit or PUD. The maximum height is 7 feet, maximum width 6 feet, and depth is 6 feet. No more than 2 clothing donation bins shall be permitted on per premises. No clothing collection bin shall not be located in required front or street side yards within 5 feet of any parcel boundaries or 10 feet from overhead utilities. The placement of the clothing collection bin shall not interfere with the operation of any access drives, maneuvering aisles, or impede access to any off-street required parking facility. Clothing and donation bins shall not be located with any easement or block access to any designated fire lanes. And in the performance standards, they shall be maintained in good conditions at all times with no visible structural damage, corrosion, or graffiti. The names and address, the website, phone number of the owner or operator of the bin shall be displayed on the front of the bin. The clothing and donation bin shall be designated, shall be designed such that only the owner or operator that can remove the contents. The donation bin shall be collected. The items shall be collected on a regular basis to ensure that they do not accumulate, and the donation items shall not be permitted to be deposited or stored outside the donation bin. So that, and we'll get into discussion after I'm going to go through all three of these amendments. The next amendment is to section 411, vehicle use area. We are expanding the parking exempt area in the city by 83 acres. This will increase the parking exempt area for a total of 178.7 acres. The current boundary is in red. The new boundaries primarily are in blue. So it's going to be expanding east to take in the areas around Lake Mirror and those historic districts. Also on the south side here and here closer to Lake Wire. So we're expanding that area. Within the downtown, there are multiple parking options available, such as on-street and off-street surface lots. There is, as we heard yesterday from the Lakeland Downtown Development Authority, that there is not a shortage of parking in Lakeland. There are numerous surface parking areas. It may be a perception of a shortage of parking, but because the streets fill up quick, but there are parking garages that provide parking for downtown. The downtown also offers a mix of land uses and enhanced transit, bicycle, and pedestrian facilities, which encourage to support all modes of transportation when you're in downtown. So we feel that expanding this parking exempt area will further the downtown goal for land to be utilized for a specific use and not be utilized for for a parking lot. When somebody builds an office or something like that, they have to designate so much areas for parking. Now, when they do voluntarily provide parking, they still need to meet the land development code criteria for landscaping and buffering and those things, and handicap accessibility. So that's in there. But if you're developing in these areas, you'd be able to utilize that site more for your use. I should hopefully say uses, to get a mix of uses there, to encourage development within this area. And we have plenty of parking opportunities and transit opportunities within downtown. So those are the 3 amendments associated with LDC 21001, and we stand for any questions you may have.
I guess I'm just not clear on how, with regard to the donation bins, how the elimination of the requirement to pick up or clean up once every 7 days, how the elimination of that language guarantees that will occur. I'm not clear.
It may not guarantee, but we just thought the 7 days was fairly arbitrary, and we felt that it could be less. It could be 4 days. It could be 5 days. We just wanted to make sure that they are maintained without that time frame. They could. We thought that was kind of unreasonable, 7 days, and it was really arbitrary. So
in the end, there's still the requirement
Right.
that there not be any items collecting outside of the bin. So it really becomes the responsibility of the operator to make sure that it's collected at a frequency that prevents the overflow of items. And from a code enforcement perspective too, with 7 days, being able to track that and cite someone for not doing it within that time frame is a lot more difficult than just saying, being able to observe, okay, there are items outside of the bin, then it would become a code violation.
Is there any way we could put a provision for this happening habitually, like so many violations and it has to get removed?
That's not built into the current recommendation. So it's, the goal is always to get compliance. And so we would, I think at this point, want to proceed with not having that and see how this works. And if we find that because there hasn't been something that we can point to as working or not working because we don't have standards. So this will give us that baseline to in the future see if it's needed to have it be based upon number of violations, then we could bring that back as an amendment to this.
We do have in our code enforcement process, there's a built-in provisions for repeat violators that increases the amount of penalties that they can face. It also, normally in the code enforcement, if there's a violation, you get a notice of violation that gives you a certain amount of time to correct it before any legal action is taken by the city. If you are a repeat violator, you are not entitled to an opportunity to correct the violation before legal action is taken, and the fine can accrue from the date that the notice is given. So normally in the first violation, you get the notice, you've got time to cure it, that time passes, then you go to a hearing, the hearing officer gives you even more time to cure, and then the fine starts to accrue. With a repeat violation, that fine can accrue from the very day of the second notice that goes out. So the fines can be higher and they can accrue faster. And that's just built into the process for any code violation.
Yeah, I know the operators really can't control if somebody comes with a truckload of stuff to put in it. So I hate to, but at the same time, I want to weed out, the people that don't come and collect on a regular basis.
it'd be hard to work something like that into this without creating a permit program that we could then revoke the permit for having one of these on the property, which it's not what the city's recommending. So it kind of would probably change the structure of the program a little bit. But I do think with the repeat violator provisions in the code enforcement process, there's plenty of ammunition for the city to, incentivize someone to follow the code.
Well, and I'm with Teresa on seeing how this works and then coming back if an amendment is needed instead of putting an additional regulation on the provision.
Is there currently a requirement to have permission from the property owner in writing from the applicant to put the donation box at all?
There's no requirements for donation bins. That's what the issue has been, is that they've been placed throughout the city without any set criteria. And as Philip had mentioned, that's resulted in a proliferation of them, being placed in spots that aren't appropriate, such as parking spaces, or near landscape buffers, things like that. So again, this is that first step into making it clear to both property owners and the operators what the expectations are for these bins.
But don't you think one of the best first steps is for the applicant to get permission from the property owner, at least in writing?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And that's not in here at all, so that's not a requirement. I don't see it.
I think we view that as being something that happens outside of this process. Obviously, if someone intends to utilize someone else's property, they should be doing it with their permission. But in the absence of a permit, the city doesn't have a way to ensure that that's taken place until after the fact. If there is an issue and then the property owner says, well, I never gave them permission, or I did give them permission and they're not abiding by their part of the standards.
But the property owner, if the person puts something, it could be an out-of-town property owner, right? If a person puts something on there without his permission or her permission, the liability of the property owner is not what it was, what we had discussed, I think, at the last meeting, where we were concerned the property owner could be liable and not even know that he was liable, that anything had occurred. So has the property owner given sufficient notification that the tenant has done this?
Yes.
Time to correct it.
So let's use the example of the mall, because I think that's the one that came up. So there's 2 bins sitting up on the north end of the mall. That's in the former Sears tract, which is owned by an out-of-town investment company. So they're unaware of what's happening, despite the fact there's mall manager at the property itself. So in that instance, that bin does have name of the company and phone number on it. So as a first step, we would have someone contact them or reach out to the mall manager and say, hey, please, contact this operator. And then if that didn't result in anything, then send out notices to the owner of the property as well as the company that is the operator of the bin, so that both are put on notice.
And if the tenant still refuses to do anything, I would assume the property owner has the power to have it removed.
Oh, yes, yes, if it's there without their permission, absolutely.
And just to say also, as a kind of a general matter, and it's something that comes up in code enforcement quite a bit, where you've got 2 private parties that may have diverging interests, like a landlord and a tenant. In the city, we try the best we can to avoid getting in the middle of what we consider to be civil disputes between private parties. So to the extent that a landlord's claiming that the bin's not supposed to be there, or it's only allowed to be there under these certain conditions, or the city's not in the business of enforcing the terms of a landlord's lease against a tenant. And so what we are in the business of is trying to protect the value of the community and eliminate nuisances. So if it came to a situation where the landlord's saying, well, it's allowed, but it's only allowed under these circumstances and they're violent or whatever, we most likely would just put them both on notice and say, you guys figure that out. All we care about is getting rid of the accumulations on the property, and then.
Property owner then has to take whatever legal action is.
Right, and that would be on the property owner, and I wouldn't be giving legal advice to that property owner as to how to do it, and the city wouldn't be giving either one of them any direction other than eliminate the code violation. They'll have to figure it out between them.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, Matt, is it?
What-
Anyone else?
I do have
I'm
a
sorry.
question. Do we have an analysis of how many of these bins exist today and what our approach will be to address this once it is incorporated?
Do not have that information, I'm sorry. I don't know how many bins we have in the city. Maybe code enforcement may know.
My only concern would be perhaps some nonprofits that have been operating and been for 15 years that has never been an issue, but it's not located in the appropriate location based on the new code, and they get cited. So I'd just be interested to see what our approach would be to address
The
that.
approach would be to, especially with this being a new set of standards, if it passes, is to reach out to those property owners and the operators and make them aware of what the standards are and give them an opportunity. After repeat visits, if they weren't in compliance, then there would likely be the next step of issuing a violation.
Okay.
But, the intent is it not to go out and all of a sudden start issuing code violations for these. It's to make the owners and operators aware, and then if there isn't any attempt at meeting the standards, then proceeding with the code compliance process.
So can I ask one more time? I know we talked about it last month, but the hesitation to put in a permit system, why are we? It seems like we're letting them do kind of whatever, and then we'll see how it goes, and then we'll come back to it and revisit it. So why did we decide, or is there not a mechanism to make some sort of small permitting process go through for these boxes?
Any permitting program is going to create an administrative burden for the staff. So I think there's that concern. There's also with this particular thing, what I mentioned last month, because the federal courts have held that collection bins are subject to some First Amendment analysis because they're essentially asking for donations to charity, which the Supreme Court has said that's a First Amendment activity. And so creating a permit program for people that they have to get a permit in order to engage in First Amendment activity creates another kind of legal issue. It's not something that's impossible, but it makes it a little bit more complicated of a process for the city to engage in. And as for
Isn't the right of privacy of the owner also a civil right? Don't they have a right to not have these things placed upon their property without their permission?
But they do, and that's why we would take the position that that's their private property right to assert and enforce. And the city, we have our codes to protect against nuisances. But we're not going to be interfering with the private property owner's right to allow or not allow. The bin is really entirely on the owner to protect that right or not. And with the ones that are existing that may not be in zoning districts that are allowed here, I think they would be subject to a non-conformity analysis. If they were previously allowed and now they're no longer allowed. But we would address those on a case by case as they came up.
Any other comments, questions? Would it act on this as far as approving the city's recommendation today?
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, this is
We're
recommendation.
asking for approval to move it on to the city commission.
Right. Is there a motion to approve the recommendations of the city?
I've got a motion to approve as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. That was going to die for lack of a second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. What's next?
Item 9, changes to Article 9, subdivision standards, and Article 13, nonconformities to address subdivision review and plating requirements, adopt standards for splitting lots and parcels, and allow for the development of non-conforming lots under certain conditions. Applicant, City of Lakeland.
Good morning again, Joshua Cheney with Community and Economic Development. The intent of our subdivision standards is to protect the public health and safety, as well as encourage and enforce the orderly layout of development of sites. And that would include streets and entrances and easements and whatnot. The first proposed addition to Article 9 would include a new subsection entitled Subdivision Review and Plating Requirements. This will help provide clarification on when subdivision review is required, and that would now read any division of a lot, parcel, or tract of land that includes the construction of new roads, drainage facilities, wetland impacts, or floodplain mitigation or reconstruction of any of these facilities shall be reviewed by the subdivision review team and may require both construction plan review and plat review. And that would be part of our subdivision review process. That is a new project, and that is separate from the process that I'll describe in just a moment as it relates to someone that doesn't have to go through platting or replatting and is going through a separate process, which is initiated by the Polk County Property Appraiser's Office. And this would be the form here on the left-hand side of the screen that a property owner would utilize in order to initiate that process, assuming that they did not need to go through subdivision review. And typically they would be contacting staff first, asking to speak to the planner on demand or a planner that was available to discuss subdivision review with them. So this new subsection 9.8.4.3 will provide details regarding splitting and combining of existing lots and parcels. All splits do not require a formal review or going through the platting process with staff, and they can go through the Polk County Property Appraiser's Office. However, what we would like to see, and this is outlined here, for instance, would be a detailed survey would be required, and this would need to show the existing conditions on the site. That would include the principal structure, the accessory structures, the property boundaries, easements, anything pertinent to the review and the proper subdivision of these parcels. The obvious intent here is to avoid nonconformities, and we outlined that here. I was not planning on reading this into the record. However, if you would like me to, I can. Okay, moving on. So this new subsection 9.8.4.4 will address additional requirements for splitting and combining lots and parcels in existing subdivisions. These proposed standards are intended to address compatibility issues, protect and maintain the existing lot and block pattern, and prevent lot and parcel splits would result in conflict with existing utilities, easements, solid waste collection areas, and alleys. And A will read, the splitting and combining of lots and parcels in existing subdivisions shall maintain the lot orientation and block pattern as shown on the recorded subdivision plat. The creation of any new lots or parcels which are oriented contrary to the orientation of lots shown on the recorded plat shall be prohibited. This has been somewhat of an issue in the past, and what we are attempting to do here is to prevent that. It could potentially create conflict with the existing property owners, the neighbors, if we were to allow this disruption to occur, which would make significant changes to the existing lot and block pattern. B will read, any new lots and parcels created shall not restrict access to any existing above ground and below ground utilities, alleys, easements, pedestrian facilities, and solid waste collection areas. Again, we're trying to prevent any nonconformities or conflicts. And then finally, we have section 13.4. Section 13, this would be located, in Article 13, which is the chapter that addresses nonconformities. The proposed changes to section 13.4 are intended to allow for the development of nonconforming lots and parcels when the nonconformity is either due to a taking or if the parcel consists of one or more lots of record that were legally created prior to July 18, 1950 and would otherwise be buildable as a legal nonconforming parcel. And using the example that was provided in the staff report, the degree of nonconformity will be limited to no more than 10% of the minimum dimensional requirements specified by the zoning. So the example given would be you have a minimum lot that is 5,000 square foot originally, and say 50 by 100, that's very typical, in which 5 feet was taken to widen a street. That also is not unusual here within the city of Lakeland. And so now what you have left is a 50-foot by 95-foot deep lot, 50 foot wide by 95 foot deep. And under the current rules, they would not be able to develop that. However, we want to, in cases like this where they're at 10% or less, we do want to see that develop. We do want to see that redevelopment or infill. So this would allow for that to move forward in a much smoother manner. So staff is recommending approval of these changes to Article 9 and Article 13, and with that, I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Any questions from the board? Anybody have a motion to approve the changes as recommended by the city?
I make a motion that we approve the recommendations.
Second.
All right, and that's Article 9 that we're referring to there. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item 10, changes to Article 2, permitted uses, and Article 5, standards for specific uses to adopt development standards allowing for the use of shipping containers as dwelling units in mobile home and multi-family zoning districts and as accessory structures for certain commercial uses, amend standards for home-based businesses, clarify parking standards for boats, trailers, and RVs on residential property, and revise development standards related to personal wireless facilities in limited development zoning districts. Applicant, City of Lakeland.
Good morning again. For the record, Todd Vargo, Senior Planner with the Community and Economic Development Division. Actually, before I get started, there's some people in the audience. I just want to make sure that you're all here for something that we're going to go over. Okay. Last Zoning Board of Adjustment and Appeals meeting we had, there was a gentleman who sat through the entire meeting waiting to hear his code enforcement case. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was okay. All right. This is one of probably the largest amendment that we're doing right now. It covers quite a bit of area. And I apologize if I go over something that was mentioned last time. I wasn't here last meeting. Philip had mentioned earlier, he did part of his text amendment was to allow shipping containers as accessory structures. We're going to go over that in a second, but we're also allowing shipping containers for use as dwelling units in multifamily districts and in mobile home parks. The proposed standards state that shipping containers may be used as dwelling units on property zoned multifamily or in existing mobile home parks within the mobile home zoning district. Conditional use approval is required. Requires architectural modifications to the shipping container, such as the addition of windows, doors, awnings, finishing materials like stucco, fiber cement siding, or other appropriate materials. If used in multifamily, The requirements for using a shipping container would include a site plan and architectural elevations. The site plan includes, should show things like setbacks, building footprints, parking location, and landscaping. If you're using a commercial, a shipping container in the mobile home zoning district, you need to show a lot layout with the setbacks between the shipping container and the neighboring structures, show where the parking is going and appurtenances such as carports or decks, and you also need to show architectural elevations. I didn't mention this before, but we get a lot of questions about shipping containers in the planning department. They, seems to be a proliferation of them nowadays, since in America we tend to import more than we export, so there's a lot of shipping containers around. This is shipping containers for accessory structures for certain commercial uses. Again, this dovetails with the amendment that Philip went over earlier. So shipping containers may be used as accessory structures for the following commercial uses: small-scale restaurants. So that'd be similar, I guess, kind of like a food truck, but it wouldn't be mobile. Indoor hydroponic production, so that would be vegetables, herbs, flowers, things like that. Small-scale specialty retail sales of antiques, fresh packaged and prepared foods, clothing, cosmetics, gifts, toys, books, jewelry, small electronics, arts and crafts, flowers, and other similar goods. And then in case there's something we forgot, there's the all-important catch-all of other uses not specifically listed when the Director of Community and Economic Development determines that the use is compatible with the surrounding uses. No more than one shipping container per premises. However, you can have kind of, when we did the food trucks a few years ago, we allowed, like, for a food truck court through a conditional use permit, you can also do more than one shipping container as kind of a court through a conditional use permit as well. So, so that's not exactly true when I said no more than one shipping container per premises. But they must meet the principal structure setbacks. If it's a hydroponic use, they can meet the general accessory structure setbacks. They're not allowed, similar to the donation bins, not allowed within any required off-street parking spaces, vehicle driveways or drive aisles, fire lanes, or pedestrian facilities. Again, we're trying to look out for that public safety. They have design and performance standards, including they must be painted and maintained in good condition at all times with no visible structural damage, corrosion, or graffiti. Shipping containers used for restaurant and retail uses must have architectural features such as commercial doors and windows, awnings, outdoor lighting, seating, and landscaping planters. Signage is limited to building-mounted signs with a maximum sign area not to exceed 25 square feet per wall face and 50 square feet total. And solid waste shall be collected and disposed of using the solid waste collection bin serving the principal structure. So they don't have to have their own solid waste collection bin. Certainly they can if they want to, but they don't have to. So changing gears here, one of the other areas that this amendment is modifying is our section about home businesses. There's been some recent legislation by the Florida legislature to kind of preempt the local regulation of home businesses. So we are changing our text to comport with the recently passed legislation on home businesses by the legislature. Dropping down to the third indentation there, home-based businesses must be secondary to the use of the property as a residential dwelling, cannot have more than 2 employees on site, but you can have people working for you in an auxiliary location. Parking generated by the business cannot exceed the volume or parking generated by a residence where no business is located. cannot have impacts related to noise, vibration, heat, smoke, dust, glare, fumes, or noxious odors. Again, public safety measures. Must screen heavy equipment from the street and neighboring property. And the law passed by the legislature specifically states that heavy equipment means commercial, industrial, or agricultural vehicles, equipment, or machinery. And then there's some language in the law passed by the state of Florida as well that has to do with parking and storage of commercial vehicles, which we'll talk about next. So we're also doing some small amendments to section 5.17, the parking and storage of commercial vehicles, boats, trailers, and construction equipment, to clarify where they can be parked. So you cannot park a motorhome, boat, or trailer or commercial vehicle within a street side yard. And one of the things that came up recently is we don't have a definition of street side yard in the land development code. So we're adding a definition of street side yard and clarifying that you can't park a motorhome, boat, trailer, or commercial vehicle within that street side yard. I mentioned before there's some parking in conjunction with the home-based business, and that is vehicles and trailers used in connection with the business must be parked in legal parking spaces that are not located within the right-of-way, on or over a sidewalk, or on any unimproved surfaces at the residence. So you can't be in the right-of-way, you can't be on or over a sidewalk. Again, that's more of a public safety thing. Or any unimproved surfaces at the residence, which would be where the home-based business is. Finally, in this section of Land Development Code amendments, we're doing some small, quick amendment to the personal wireless facilities. And basically, there's some references, some old references in that section to the Rural Conservation, or RC, zoning district, which is no longer used. We don't have that anymore. And we're replacing those references with the LD, Limited Development Zoning District. And in one of the tables, we're setting 150-foot maximum height for a personal wireless service facility in the LD, Limited Development Zoning District, within the central city area. That's another instance where the table mentioned RC zoning. We're just changing it to LD. I know that was a lot to go over, and I just hit the highlights, but I will stand for any questions if you have any. Yes, sir.
If I understand this correctly, I could be living in a neighborhood that is all homes, has some empty lots, or I could have on one side of me an empty lot. They could come in with a shipping container, and supposedly they have to make it look like a home. Is that correct?
No, you could only do shipping containers in the multifamily districts and the mobile home zoning district. Okay. So we're not yet taking the step to allow a shipping container as a single family house.
And what about the with home business? I could have somebody come in and say, well, I have a home business, and they might have an oil change facility that it's blocked from the view, but to some extent. But I mean, that also occurs. Is that correct?
As long as it meets the requirements of the Florida legislature, yeah, I don't think there's anything we can really do to stop it. Now, again, they have to screen any heavy equipment, any commercial, industrial, agricultural vehicles, equipment, or machinery from the street and neighboring property. But yeah.
So what you're saying is basically whatever the city might adopt that's contrary to what the legislature in Florida and Tallahassee has decided, no matter how onerous it may be, we're stuck with it.
It's my understanding.
So, unfortunately, it's a broad preemption of our local authority to regulate that this bill has handed us that we've We're trying to adjust, and what this proposal is really the city's attempt at doing what is still allowed under what was a very broad preemption bill.
Trust me, we've had all of those discussions internally. We understand.
I have a question on the shipping containers. For accessory dwelling units, can those be used under this, or is that not allowed, or is that a special? Do you have to do something special if you can make it look like the original dwelling unit?
So accessory dwelling units are accessory to single-family zoning districts. So again, we wouldn't allow the shipping containers. They're only allowed in multifamily and mobile home zoning. So
But some multifamily zoning does allow for single-family
that's true. There are
uses.
some.
So as long as it's within a multifamily zoning district, yes, that shipping container could be used for an accessory dwelling unit potentially. And I'll look to Matt, since he had worked on these as well, and make sure that that's a correct understanding of how this could be applied.
Good morning, Matthew Lyons, Community and Economic Development. The big issue in single-family districts is our regulations for the ADUs require that the accessory dwellings be compatible in design and appearance with the principal structure on the lot. Generally, that means referencing the same architectural style, materials, roofing, windows, stuff like that. I mean, theoretically, I mean, a shipping container, I mean, it's really just a structural element if you want to modify it. We've seen examples where they have added siding, small hipped or gabled roofs, for example. There are ways it could be done like that, so we would not dismiss it entirely, but generally it would have to retain the appearance of a residential dwelling compatible with the main home. And obviously, I won't say that's subjective, but it's dependent on the house that's already on the property there. So that's where we are currently with those regulations.
Since the accessory dwelling units have to be approved through the board.
The compatibility
It could come
review.
with a shipping container, and if it met all the requirements, it could get approved.
Yeah, I mean, the shipping containers, I mean, they're standardized, either 20 or 40 feet, typically 8 feet wide, so you're looking at 160 to, 320 square feet. They could theoretically be combined if you want to hire an engineer to cut them apart and do them like that. But we've had the ADU provisions in place since 2009. And in those 12 years, we've not seen any proposals for that use. But at some point, I mean, that could come there. I mean, from our experience, the markets where these have been used for single-family homes, they tend to be higher-end homes. We have an actual architect, someone who really wants to be creative, but we have not seen that in the Lakeland market yet.
Any other questions?
What is the definition for a side yard now? You said it's going to be changed. What is the new definition of it?
Todd can get to that. Yeah.
No, it's actually not going to be changed. It's going to be added. We didn't have one before. I have it here. Let me find it. So the street side yard definition is a yard extending the full width of a lot between any building and the street side lot line. So it's only corner lots. It's essentially that area between the side street and the building.
So what you're saying is, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying you can't park your boat, you can't park an RV in a side lot if it is a corner lot,
You can't park it between the house and the street.
even if it's fenced? If it's,
No?
so if it's in the rear yard, the rear portion of the yard, just because it's a corner lot, you can't use that for your RV storage or your boat storage?
So the rear yard would be the part between the building or the house and the rear property line, you could park there.
The building would be the threshold. Behind the building, you're fine. But if it was
Right, as long as it's behind the line, the imaginary line of the building, you're fine.
All right.
You just can't park between the building and the road.
Gotcha. Okay.
I have a question. I want to go to the home-based business. The way I understand it is that I can run a business out of my home, correct? And then I can park a vehicle. If it's in the back, even though we have 6-foot fence guidelines, it can be 10 feet tall and my neighbor can look at it and be annoyed. And we just have to let this happen. Is that how I understand it?
Yeah, unfortunately, like I said, the legislature has preempted the local authority with regard to the regulation of the home-based business. And the statute gives very limited ability for the city to control the activity of that home-based business. And what the slide that you're looking at, the bullet points that are under the home-based businesses, those are all things that are in the statute that the legislature has allowed us to control. But we are no longer, we don't have the authority to regulate a home-based business any further than what the statute allows. That statute's already in effect, and this is already something that's it's a done deal as far as the state is concerned. And so we're trying to amend our local regulation to allow us to do what we can under the statute. But yes, you can now, in the state of Florida, you can operate a home-based business, and you can have up to 2 employees there. And these restrictions that you see here are the ones that are contemplated in the statute. So we're trying to adopt them locally so that we can enforce what we can to protect the residential neighborhoods.
Any other questions? You asking us to approve your recommendation?
Yes, please, so we can move it on to the city commission.
Is there a motion to approve?
motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
You have no choice. Basically.
Our enthusiasm is underwhelming for this whole thing that the state's created.
Thank you.
Item 11, changes to Article 5, standards for specific uses, to revise development standards for new mobile home parks, to allow a smaller development site area, smaller lot sizes and greater density as a conditional use, to allow for the use of shipping containers as dwelling units in new and existing mobile home parks as a conditional use, and to allow for the use of tiny homes in recreational vehicle parks and spaces designated for recreational vehicles in existing mobile home parks. Applicant, City of Lakeland.
Good morning. For the record, Matthew Lyons and Community Economic Development again. This request is really three different parts here. Part of it pertains to the previous amendment with the allowance for the use of shipping containers as dwellings, and in this case for mobile home parks. So it formally codifies that through the CUP process. But also, if you may have seen on Friday, the Ledger ran a article about mobile home parks in Polk County and Lakeland. And a lot of it pertained to the issue of affordability. With the housing market having heated up in recent years, we've seen a lot more interest in mobile homes as affordable housing solutions. So part of this is to do the conditional use process, incentivize new affordable housing, so to allow for smaller development sites and greater density and smaller lot sizes. if they give us a better quality product design than historically may have been produced under by regulation. So this first section here, 5.11.2.2, just under the principal uses permitted, we do allow for the shipping containers as dwelling units in accordance with section 5.25 as a conditional use. And then under the development regulations, individual site regulations, we had a couple of footnotes. Right now you have the minimum requirements, minimum 20 acres, maximum 7 units per acre. And then we had the minimum lot size of 4,000 square feet and lot width of 40 feet. We added these 2 footnotes here. First pertains to the minimum development site area. Next to an existing legal legal conforming mobile home park land use, new parks which do not meet the minimum development site of 20 acres may be considered through the conditional use process. An example here, a few years back, we rezoned the 18.6 acre property West Ariana Street, over there west of the House Rvs shopping center there. And it was not large enough to qualify for a new mobile home park, but it was surrounded by mobile home parks. So it's really, from a market point of view, probably very ideal and attractive, but under the current code, we could not do that. So in this case, that property could be developed for a new mobile home park there. And then the second part, per the discussion on affordable housing, to promote the use of new innovative manufactured housing, new mobile home parks with a maximum density of up to 12 units per acre and a minimum lot size of 30 by 100 feet, 3,000 square feet, may be considered through the conditional use process. However, to be considered for approval, such parks will need to include creative, innovative manufactured housing designs, along with enhanced amenities such as outdoor recreation and civic open space. So that essentially they have to come forward with a detailed plan for both the actual park, but also the type of units that they want to use there. And this will come to this board as a conditional use and would require both the approval of the Planning and Zoning Board and the City Commission. And this next part here pertains to the replacement of mobile homes and non-conforming mobile home parks. These would be the older parks, generally the ones that were developed decades ago. They were annexed in that we did not zone for mobile home uses. So right now we have several parks. Most of them are up around Robson Street, Crevasse, that area west of North Florida Avenue, north of Griffin Road that we annexed in about 20 years ago. There's several older, smaller parks there that were established in the county. And when we brought them in, we did not give them mobile home zoning. And so under the current policy, once they remove or a unit is destroyed, they cannot replace it. And so those older parks, essentially they are being slowly eliminated through attrition. At least that's the idea, but it really has some issues from both a property rights perspective, but also from a policy perspective. Right now, effectively you're discouraging updating those older units. Some of them go back to the 1950s and 60s, to the older pre-1976 mobile homes. They're not built to the current federal code requirements. They are, have issues as far as both the life safety and also wind load. So the current policy actually incentivizes retaining those older units, which is not a really desirable outcome here. So what we're proposing through a conditional use, we would allow those parks to actually replace units. Right now, we're recommending they be older than 10 years at the time of permitting. And also, they may have to make additional upgrades to the park. A lot of them have older roads which are falling apart, no landscaping, buffering, stuff like that. So it would be done on a case-by-case basis. All these parks, they're individual, they have their own issues. So we would look at what improvements we would like to see, and the goal was to allow the park owner to maintain some economic viable return on the property while hopefully cleaning up all the issues and getting a better quality product. And so right now, That's addressed under section 5.11.5.1. The new A, that's the existing language which we struck through the bottom part. So what we're adding is under B, and essentially it reads as follows. Mobile home parks and mobile home subdivisions located outside of mobile home zoning districts shall be deemed non-conforming uses. Units in such parks, if destroyed or otherwise removed, shall only be replaced with new manufactured housing through the conditional use process, subject to the separation and setback requirements specified in section 5.11.5.3. And for the purposes of this section, we define new manufactured housing to be any HUD-certified home was manufactured no later than 10 years at the time of permitting. And again, as conditions for approval, the owner may be required to make certain improvements, including but not limited to landscaping, buffering, stabilization of existing driveways and other vehicle use areas. These parks will remain non-conforming, so in the event the actual use or occupancy of all of the mobile homes on the property and or manufactured housing cease completely for a period of 365 consecutive days or longer, the non-conforming status will terminate. So that doesn't change. So eventually, if the park owner just abandons the property, they will not be able to bring any more units back there. And finally here, the last part, this pertains to the tiny house RVs. These are typically what you see on HGTV. They're very kind of popular among retirees and younger people. Typically have like a towable chassis here, like the Outback example. And we're just formally codifying that through our zoning code that we will allow them as RVs, essentially what they are within RV parks and designated RV spaces within existing mobile home parks. In the regulations, we define a tiny home here, and they do have to be licensed, just registered as an RV under Florida law. I mean, these are things that are being towed around on the road, so they do have to be roadworthy as an actual RV there, but we are formally allowing for those uses in our code now. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
I have a question. So the mobile homes that you're referring to, the mobile home parks, are all leased land, is that correct? This doesn't pertain to owned land mobile home parks?
Yeah, most of them, they're one person, and they have 2 or more mobile homes on them. Some of them, I mean, I use the term mobile home park very loosely. I mean, some of them are just a group of mobile homes on a piece of property, and they were established probably back in the 50s or 60s when the regulations either were non-consistent or very weak, but they've been there for decades and they've been allowed to remain. So that's primarily what it would apply to, that type of situation.
So if someone's mobile home, say, off of Reynolds Road that's on owned land in the leisure estates, if one of them burned, would they be able to put like a small tiny home there? If
it's a single family platted lot of record, no, that would be a terminated non-conforming use. So it would not apply to that.
And there are probably very few examples, if any, within the city of Lakeland city limits of a single-family platted lot with a single mobile home on it. That Reynolds Road example may be outside.
There's some over kind of West Lakeland, again, that area, kind of north of the Harvey Shopping Center. I think we annexed in maybe in the 90s. I mean, it's also in a single family currently, but we get people all the time that call and they want to know if they can put in new mobile homes, and they're like, well, there are mobile homes everywhere. And you go around, they were there established decades ago when the area was in the county, and they were annexed in, they're legal non-conforming, and those, once they're removed, they cannot be placed. So that policy will not be changing in neighborhood zone for single family when you have, one mobile home per lot.
Well, you still have one mobile home per lot in a lot of parks, just some of it's leased land, some of it's owned land, so it.
Yes, yeah, I mean, again, the distinction is lots of record in a plat subdivision versus a mobile home park where all the land is held in common and the owner leases out individual lots. I mean, technically they're not platted, they have a perspective that designates those areas, but they're something, they're no legal rights on a per lot basis for those uses.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Public comment or questions in this section?
Yes.
Perfect.
Please give your name and address.
Hi, good morning. My name is Dan Stumphauser, and I own and operate 2 mobile home parks within the city of Lakeland. I provide housing for low-income, primarily for low-income housing residents, and there's about 50 units that I have. So one of them is a legal conforming mobile home park, so I don't believe it's largely affected by any of these proposed changes.
Yeah, if your park is zoned for mobile home uses, this is not intended for that. It's intended for those parks that were annexed in and were never given mobile home zoning. So if your park has mobile home zoning, this would not apply to that.
One does, and that holds about 30. My second one is a legal, non-conforming mobile home park that's not in the mobile homes district. It's on New Tampa Highway.
Okay.
Like you said, in West Lakeland. So there's about 20 mobile homes. 3 have been removed prior to me acquiring the property, and I'm very interested in replacing those units. Now, some of the changes here that would affect me is, as it is, the 10-year rule. In Lakeland, I've been operating these parks for about 3 years. There are no less than 10-year mobile homes that I've found available in the market. Further, as you mentioned, in 1976 is when the standards changed for construction relative to safety, wind loads, and things like that. What I would like is more of a window going back 25 or 30 years on the length of, on the age of a home when it's moved in. I'm a classic car aficionado, so the way that you maintain a car, you can have a car that's 3 years old that's in far worse shape than a car that's 40 years old that's been maintained. It's the exact same thing with a mobile home. So I would really like us to look at the age requirement and really look at it from a common sense perspective. Secondly, the setbacks that are mentioned. My mobile home park, my legal non-conforming mobile home park, doesn't have the setbacks since 1995, I think it changed. So I would like for mobile home parks that are legal, whether they're conforming or non-conforming, for me to be able to replace units according to the same density and position that were already platted and allocated by the Department of Health and by the City of Lakeland.
Okay, I'll answer both parts there. The first part, actually, we're already having an internal discussion. Another individual last week raised the question of the age of the units there, and he was proposing 25 years. And upon further research, those HUD codes actually had been updated in the 90s, I believe it was 94. After Hurricane Andrew, they did revise them to further strengthen the wind load requirements. So the units that are manufactured after 1994, they would be better suited for Florida than any of the ones that were built after 1976. So we're having a conversation, and it's likely that we'll get amended when this goes to the City Commission, so we are aware of that there.
Perfectly fair.
Okay, and the other part, your question about the development standards for non-conforming mobile home parks, we're not changing there. What we have now, we do have separate standards which allow more flexibility. They do have a minimum life safety requirement separation. Mobile home to mobile home is generally 10 feet. That would be in accordance with the Florida Building Code and the fire codes. That's something that we don't really have any leeway there. When you have an appurtenance, we have a carport or something non-combustible that can be as close as 6 feet. Front setbacks, we have generally, we'll let you build to what's there. So we have the code minimum is 15 feet, but the units you have now were built to 10 feet or 5 feet. We'll probably allow you to replace them there, but otherwise, we're not changing that requirement.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, sounds good. Those were my concerns. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes. I'm sorry? 3339 Mossy Oak Circle. Thanks.
Any other questions? Do we hear a motion to adopt the city's recommendation?
Motion to adopt.
Right. Your motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Item 12, changes.
Sorry, for the benefit of the speaker, just to let him know that this will now be going on to the city commission at their October meetings. The second meeting in October will be a public hearing. And as Mr. Lyons stated, we've already been having those discussions about changing the age of the mobile home units. And so that if that occurs, it would be at the direction of the city commission at that second meeting in October. So you might want to track it and be in attendance at that meeting.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Item 12, changes to Article 3, Urban Form Standards to amend design standards for attached garages on single-family and two-family uses in response to recent changes to the Florida statutes. Applicant, City of Lakeland.
Good morning again. For the record, Philip Scarce, Principal Planner with Community and Economic Development. As you just mentioned, this is stems from recent legislation amending Chapter 163 of the Florida statutes, and that's Florida's primary growth management legislation. So House Bill 401 was recently approved, and it prohibits certain building design elements from being applied to residential dwellings. And one of those specific design elements was the location and placement of garages. So currently within the Land Development Code, we have, we regulate the placement of street-facing garages within urban and suburban context districts. The design was intended to minimize the impacts of garage-centric housing designs in order to preserve neighborhood character and enhance a safe, walkable neighborhood as the city develops. This was achieved in the urban neighborhood context districts, requiring the garage door being set back 5 feet behind the principal facade, or step back 5 feet behind the principal facade. And within the suburban neighborhood developments, garage is not protruding out from that front facade no more than 15 feet. But with the recent legislation, those design elements kind of have been preempted. So we are proposing new language within the code to eliminate the current standards for the garage placement. We still want to maintain regulations for the visual effect of the garage. So in an urban neighborhood, we have removed that language that requires 5 foot setback from the front facade, but limits that garage to be no more than 50% of the overall width of the elevation, or 36 feet, whichever is less. Same thing in suburban. We took that protruding 15 feet requirement out, and this was I thought I had that. The old the 15 feet where a garage protrudes in front of a house. As I mentioned last time, it was, we had called those snout houses. So that's being eliminated. So within the suburban neighborhood context districts, you can have no more than 60% of the overall front elevation of the principal structure, or 36 feet in width. And I apologize for the typo there in the slide. So it's suburban neighborhood, SNH. Context district, and then the overall door height would be 8 feet in height. So those are the proposed amendments for this section. Again, reacting to the recent legislation prohibiting certain design elements, being those of garages. So I'll stand for any questions you may have.
You may not be able to answer this, but why does the state feel that this is necessary to regulate from a state level?
I do not know. I just read the raw bill that was passed, and it really didn't get into reasons why and everything. We'd have to go back to the members that proposed it. Really,
Like likely that somebody couldn't get something through at the local level, so they pushed it at state.
You're probably right.
Yeah, our understanding is someone probably lobbied their senator or representative and wasn't happy with the local regulation, which of course that's certainly something we were aware that any local government was asking for. And we thought it was a bit of a reach, but we had no.
And we really don't have a choice on approving this because it's.
Correct for smaller government.
Well, I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, wait. I'm acting president. I can't make a motion, can I? Since Lyle's gone? I forgot.
Normally that would not, that's not the normal, there's not a specific rule that says that.
I'll make the motion that we accept.
Second.
Okay, there we go.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed.
Item 13, changes to Article 10 concurrency standards to provide clarification regarding the concurrency determination process and adopt review requirements for major traffic studies. Applicant, City of Lakeland.
Good morning. For the record, Chuck Barbie with the Community and Economic Development Department. Much of this we discussed last month. I mean, really the intent here is to formalize our traffic study procedures, get them incorporated into land development code, and really establish a clear blueprint of how traffic studies must be conducted within the city to comply not only with our comprehensive plan, but also any state requirements that exist. And of course, a lot of the requirements we have included in the land development code are mentioned in our city's concurrency management ordinance, which was adopted by the City Commission, and of course the comprehensive plan. When we conduct concurrency determinations and for the public's purpose, concurrency is when we evaluate the availability of public services and infrastructure to support new development. So we look at transportation, we look at water, wastewater, schools, parks, and those types of infrastructure items. And we make non-binding determinations at the time of zoning or land use, and binding determinations at the time of either final site plan approval or final subdivision plat approval. For major traffic studies, and those are for projects that generate more than 750 daily trips. Our primary focus is on the PM peak hour directional capacity of the surrounding road system. That's really what our primary roadway-based concurrency or level of service standards are based. So we look at trip generation, we look at a study area based on capacities on the surrounding road network, and we use documents such as the trip generation rates from the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. We look at the capacities as published by the Transportation Planning Organization's Roadway Network Database, as well as other industry accepted standards to establish the ground basis for conducting these studies on a national basis. The standards that are proposed in the Land Development Code get to data collection. One of the things we also, we like to require is that traffic counts be collected during a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday of a standard week without a holiday. If possible, when school's in session, so we can get something that's most representative of the actual traffic for most of the year. For multi-phased projects, we required that we look at that the developer looks at the cumulative impacts of the development, so we know ultimately what is going to be required to accommodate the project through build-out, but also at certain phases in the process, what mitigation requirements are going to be needed at what period of time. And one of the things we've seen is that with the residential development we have around the city, a lot of the development activity has maybe a 10, 15, even 20-year build out. And so putting those timelines in is important to make sure we're keeping pace with the rate of development for those individual projects. The new comprehensive plan that becomes effective at the end of September also includes a Vision Zero goal. And with that, our goal is to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries within the city of Lakeland. So our traffic study procedures and really our entire transportation planning process is geared towards meeting that goal. And we just want to get that out there and let folks know that this is something that is a very important issue for us, as well as it is with DOT and Polk County. The traffic study standards that we have do not affect the permitting requirements of the individual jurisdictions that operate the roadways within the Lakeland area. So most of the major highways you think of, Florida Avenue, Bartow Road, US 98, New Tampa Highway, those are operated by the Florida Department of Transportation. Others like Kathleen Road, north of the interstate, Griffin Road, west of US 98, or Lakeland Highlands Road, south of the Parkway, are operated by Polk County. So we make sure that we include those agencies in our traffic analyses, but they have their own procedures, their own permitting requirements, and this does not truncate those at all. And to really make sure that we're all clear on how the study must be conducted beyond what's included in the Land Development Code language, we also require that studies be conducted according to approved methodology, and that's almost like a contractual arrangement where we sign on and they sign on, the developer signs on that says that this is how the study is going to be conducted, and really as long as the study meets our level of service standards in the comprehensive plan, then the project either moves forward, gets a green light with traffic conditions, or is denied. So, I mean, what we do is that methodology is really, frankly, the most important thing that is done in a traffic study within the city. And the changes that I discussed last month have been incorporated into the draft that's in the packet and is available for your approval today. Based on input from Polk County and our Traffic Operations Division, the methodologies and our procedures are more multimodal in nature, and so we just want to make sure that we're considering bicycle, pedestrian, transit facilities surrounding a particular development site, and that we use the most recent roadway network database as published by the Polk TPO. And for that roadway network database, the traffic counts are collected about every 18 months to 2 years, and the document is published about 6 months after that. So we just want to make sure that the development community and that we are using the most available, the latest available data. And so with that, I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the board?
Just one question. I recognize what we're trying to do, keep things somewhat consistent, easier for the developer to understand what their expectations are. I guess when we get a little bit, what I would say maybe into the weeds on some of these things, dictating certain days of data collection, things of that nature, do we prohibit ourselves from looking outside the box on what an engineer's approach might be a little bit? And just in that vein, I see we've got data collection Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Might make sense in a traditional development circumstance, but there might be a unique situation that might drive a different approach based on an engineer's view. Are there any concerns or considerations for that?
And we do have language in there that, for specific uses, and probably the most recent one that comes to mind is the football stadium at Southeastern University. Right. because that is a very Saturday intensive type use with very high peaks, particularly at the end of the game. We have specific conditions and had a study that was specially conducted for that use, and so we do have that specified in here. Either for special events or for like residential development, a lot of times we'll look at the AM peak, especially if it's close to a school because of the overlap of school traffic, or midday if it's more of a retail type development. So we do have that flexibility built in.
Very good.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion on the floor?
I move that we accept the amendments as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. On to item 14.
Item 14, report of City Commission action on Planning and Zoning Board recommendations along with Planning and Housing Manager's report.
In the month of September, the City Commission took action on 2 items. One was the 180-foot high cell tower on the Holloway Park Foundation property, and the second was the modification for Parkway Preserve dealing with the optional access point. And at yesterday's City Commission meeting, it was reported that there has been an agreement reached between the Property Owners Association of Caroline Lakes and the developer. But my understanding is that the Property Owners Association has yet to ratify that agreement, but in principle, all parties have agreed to allowing for the improvements to take place within the Caroline Boulevard right-of-way.
Any questions or comments from the audience?
I'm just going to conclude with cases coming up. It's okay. So there is a land use map amendment and a zoning request for property off Olive Street, located at 1506 Olive Street, and that's for a single-family subdivision. And then there's going to be a modification request for what is a future phase of Morgan Creek, now being called Gresham Trails, and that is to allow for the introduction of 4,000 square foot lots, and also to change the configuration of those lot layouts. And then we'll have a comprehensive plan amendment brought to you for the 10-year water supply plan. That'll be coming up in October.
I have a crazy question. What we just adopted with the garage setbacks, are those going to apply to those incoming developments?
So the legislation did allow for there to be control of those certain features, garage placement relative to building facades through planned unit developments. So the local government still has the ability to have conditions related to those standards.
What the legislation did was it said that the local government can't implement a design requirement outside of a historic district or a planned unit development. There may have been another exception in there that CRA, that's what it was. There's a historic district, a CRA, or a PUD. So, and I think the idea as far as why was that important on state level is that you probably throughout the state you have lots of overlay districts with different design element requirements, and so by eliminating that outside of historic districts or CRAs or PUDs, it kind of brings a little bit more uniformity across the state to what design is required through the Florida Building Code, because most of that's already regulated through the state by the Florida Building Codes.
Thank you.
All right, now we're on to any questions or comments from the audience. I don't see anything, and that would bring us to a close for today.
Have a good one, everybody.